Hi, my name is Lena Florian, and I'm going to be showing you how to make this menu in Unity using the new Unity UI in Unity 4.6. Right-click in the hierarchy and select UI, then Canvas. Don't put it in your main camera like I did here. Set the canvas to Screen Space Camera. We're doing this because rotating UI objects in Screen Space Overlay doesn't give the desired 3D effect. Next, drag in the main camera to the Screen Space Render Camera slot. Make sure the Scale mode is set to Scale with Screen Size and set it to Match Height. Right-click on the canvas in your hierarchy and select UI, then Panel. We'll be using this panel as more of an anchor for our menu elements, so you can delete the image on it. In the panel's Rect Transform, set the distance from the left and right sides to 280. Name this panel Menu Panel. Then right-click on it and select UI, then Image. This is going to be the sign. Right-click on the menu panel again and select UI, then Panel. This is where we're going to be putting the buttons, so once again, you can delete the image. Drag the top of this panel just under the sign. Go ahead and make sure you set the sign's anchor to the top of the menu panel. Do this by selecting the sign and in the Rect Transform, click on the box with the position and Shift-click, Alt-click, and Control-click on the top center. This sets the anchor, position, and pivot appropriately. Then change the Y position in the Rect Transform or just drag the sign up. With the sign still selected, open an Animation tab if you don't already have one. You can animate the swinging any way you'd like. Now we're going to make one of the buttons. Select the Menu Buttons panel. Right-click and select UI, then Button. Assign the appropriate sprite, in this case the new game sprite, and make sure you click Preserve Aspect. Resize the button to any size you'd like, and go ahead and delete its text component. Now we're going to set up the animation for the button. With the button game object selected, go to your Animation tab. Click the drop-down and create a new clip. Name it Menu Button Normal. Make another named Menu Button highlighted. Go to each animation and make sure the loop time is off. We're going to do the highlighted animation first, so click the record button or click the first keyframe to make sure you're recording. Then click on the source image of the button and change it to the new game active sprite. Then change the X and Y scale to 1.1. Now click the drop-down and select the normal animation. Enter any number into the X and Y value and then change it back to 0. This tricks it into setting a keyframe for you. There's probably a legitimate way to do this, but this works for me. Now, open an Animator tab if you don't already have one. If Normal isn't orange, then right-click on it and set it as default. Right-click on Normal, hit Copy, then right-click in a free space in the Animator and hit Paste. Change the name of this state to Menu Button Pressed. Select the button game object and change its transition to animation. The triggers you see there correspond with the parameters in the Animator. So click the little plus and add a trigger parameter in the Animator. Now do this 2 more times, name them Highlighted, Normal, and Pressed. Click Normal and drag a transition to Highlight. Then from Highlight, drag a transition to Pressed. Make sure to set the condition from Normal to Highlight, and then the condition for Highlight to Pressed. Now drag a transition from Pressed to Highlight, but leave the condition as exit time. Drag another from Highlight to Normal and set the condition to Normal. If you hit play now, the animation will be a little weird. Go into your Animation tab with the button selected. We're going to add one more thing to the normal animation. Drag the red line out just a little bit and set the blank keyframe again by setting the X and Y value to something random, then setting it to 0. This makes sure the animation is short. If you hit play again, the animation is still slow though. There's one more thing we need to check. Click on each transition, and if you see a lot of space between the animation and the little arrow, drag in the little arrow. This should allow your button to animate properly. Now go back to your scene view and duplicate the button 2 times. Rename one of the duplications to Load Game Button and drag it down. Now click on its source image and set the sprite to the Load Game sprite. Change the other duplicate's name to Settings and drag it down. Position them all evenly. Now set the Settings source image to its proper sprite. If you hit play now, you'll see it looks like we're done, but the highlight animations are still set to New Game. Go to the location of your animations and duplicate the menu button highlight animation twice. You also need to duplicate the new button Animator twice and rename them to Settings Button and Load Game Button. Then put them on their corresponding button. Now we need to go through all the animators and make sure each has the proper highlight animation. So go to the Load Game Animator, click on the Highlight state, and in the inspector, change the motion to Menu, Load Game, Highlight. And do the same thing for the Settings button. Now we need to change the settings and Load Game highlight animations. So click on your Settings button, and in the Animation tab, make sure the highlight animation is active. Make sure you're recording and then change the button's source image to the Settings Active sprite. Do this again for the Load Game highlight animation. Now when you hit play, you should see all the buttons animating appropriately. Right-click on your menu panel in your hierarchy, go to UI, then Image. We're going to do the Load Game panel first, so change the source image to the Load Game panel sprite. Make it big enough so that it's covering the buttons. Change its name to Load Game Panel. Then set its anchor to bottom center and its Y position to -565. Now we're going to animate it sliding in. So open your Animation tab and create a new animation. Name it Menu, Panel, Slide In. Make sure you're recording and set the Y position of the very first frame to -565. Drag the red line out and make sure to set the Y position here to 35. If you accidentally animated the X position as well, hit the drop-down arrow on the animation and delete the X component. And make sure that loop time is checked off. If you hit play, you'll see that the Load Game panel automatically slides in. We don't want that to happen. We'd like it to stay at the bottom, so we're going to create an idle animation for it. Once again, in your Animation tab, create a new clip for it, name it Menu, Panel, Idle. Click on the very first frame and set a keyframe for the Y position at -565. Go to your animator and make sure the Menu, Panel, Idle is default by right-clicking it and setting it to default. Then right-click on the Menu, Panel, Slide In, copy it, right-click somewhere else and hit Paste. Go ahead and set the speed in the inspector to -1. This makes the animation go backwards. Change its name to Menu, Panel, Slide Out. Make them all transition to each other in a circle like you see me doing here. Now create a new Boolean parameter and name it isDisplayed. Set the condition for Menu Panel Idle to Menu Panel Slide In to true. Then set the one from Slide In to Slide Out to false, and the one from Slide Out to Idle to false as well. Now we need to make a script that will allow a button click to trigger the isDisplayed parameter and allow the panel to slide in. So create a new C# script and name it UI Manager. Open it up and go ahead and erase the start and update functions. We're going to make a function that disables the bool in the animator and one that enables the bool in the animator. So the first one's going to be called public void disable bool in animator, and it's going to take in an animator anim. The second one's going to be the same, except it's going to say enable instead of disable. In the first function, we're going to access the bool inside of the animator by saying anim.setBool. Now this setBool takes two parameters. The first is the string of the bool that you have in your animator, in this case isDisplayed, and make sure it's spelled exactly the way it is in your animator. And the second parameter is false, since we want to disable it. Then do the same thing for the enable bool in animator function, except instead of passing in false, pass in true. Next, we're going to make one more function that we'll be using later. So type in public void navigate to int scene. And in the function, type application.loadLevel scene. We're almost done. We've just got to get these buttons working. Click on the Load Game button and find its onClick function. Click the little plus and notice that it takes in a game object. This is where we're going to be passing in the UI manager, but in order to do this, we need to create an empty game object to attach the UI manager script to. So right-click anywhere in your hierarchy and create an empty game object. Name it UI manager and attach the UI manager script. Go back to the Load Game button, and now we can drag the UI manager into the game object slot. Hit the drop-down menu, go to UI Manager, and then find the Enable Bool and Animator function. When this button's clicked, we want it to enable the Load Game panel. So that's what we're going to drag in as the parameter. Now let's hit play and see how it works. When you hit Load Game, the Load Game panel does slide in, but the sign is still swinging in the background. We're going to make it so that when panels slide into the screen, the sign slides out. With the sign selected, open the Animation tab and create a new animation. Name it Sign Slide Out. Make sure you're recording and set the first keyframe to be the current position. Then drag the red line out a bit and pull the sign up. Once again, delete the X position if you accidentally animated it. Now that we have our slide out animation, go into the animator and create a new bool. Name it isDisplayed and not isEnabled like I accidentally did here. We also need a sign slide in animation, so copy the sign slide out state and paste it. Then change the speed of the second one to -1 so that it goes backwards. Make a transition from menu sign swing to sign slide out and make the condition for it false. Then make a transition from sign slide out to the other sign slide out, which is actually sign slide in, and make the condition for that true. Then make one more transition from sign slide out 0 to menu sign swing. Make the condition for this true as well. Also, check on the isDisplayed parameter, since we do want it to be displayed when the game starts. Now we can go back to the Load Game button and add another function that's going to make the sign slide out when the button's clicked. So drag in the UI Manager, and in the drop-down, find the Disable Bool and Animator function. Then drag in the sign. Hit play to test this. You'll notice that when you hit the Load Game button, the sign animation is looping, so we need to fix that. Just go to the sign slide out animation and make sure loop time is checked off. When you press play again, everything should be functioning as intended. When you open a panel, there's no way of getting back to the menu though, so we need to make a back button. Click the Load Game panel, hit UI, and then Panel. This is just going to serve as a container, so you can delete the image. Now resize it to fit where the contents of the panel would go. Right-click this panel, add a button, and set the button's text to Back. Change its transition to Sprite Swap. Then drag in the normal sprite and the highlight sprite. The normal sprite is also going to serve as the pressed sprite. Change the text to whatever color you'd like. Go to the onClick function, hit the plus, and drag in the UI Manager. Find the Disable Bool and Anim function, and drag in the Load Game panel, and not the Load Game button like I did here. Then click plus again, drag in the UI Manager, find the Enable Bool and Animation function, and drag in the sign. The Load Game button should now open a panel, and the back button should close it. All that's left to do is make the two other panels. So copy the Load Game panel twice and rename them to New Game Panel and Settings Panel. And don't forget to change their source images. Copy the components of the Load Game button so that we can easily paste them onto the New Game button and the Settings button. When you paste in the values onto the other buttons, be sure to change the panel that they're enabling. So when you paste it on Settings, make sure to drag in the Settings panel, and for New Game, make sure to drag in the New Game panel. Don't forget the back buttons on each panel. You should also check all of those to be sure that they're disabling the proper panels. The last thing I'm going to show you is how to get to the game from the menu. In the New Game panel, select the back button and copy it. This is going to be a Start button, so drag it up and then change the text to Start. Get rid of everything that's currently in the onClick function. Hit the plus sign and drag in the UI Manager. Now find the Navigate To function. Something we need to do really quick is set up our scenes. So go to Build Settings and add Current. By the way, you probably should have saved the scene a long time ago. Now make a new scene. Go ahead and save it as Game, and then add it to the Build Settings as well. In the Build Settings, make sure that the main menu is 0 and the game is 1. Now back in the main menu, find the Start button again and set the parameter of Navigate To 1, which is the game scene that we just set. Now when you press play, going to the New Game panel and hitting Start should take you to the new scene. So that's it for this tutorial. You should now know how to make a fully interactive and fully animated main menu in Unity 4.6.